just my free time and my freedom, because I know what is meaningful to me and I know what makes me happy. And, like I want to, it's like the infinite game. The game is to stay in the game. And that's what I'm thinking about. Like, okay, I don't want to become a wage slave. Like, what does that mean? And I don't know, when you start thinking about this, like I'm trying to optimize for my energy and my freedom and my space. When you're thinking about that, you end up falling in this weird in-between space where it's like you're pursuing financial freedom in a sense, but you're not trying to run the rat race, maybe like all of the people that are just trying to get rich, for example. Like that's a whole community or genre, I don't know, of media and of content and of mindsets and of culture, of just people like trying to hustle and trying to get rich. Some of it's about money, or like if and the technology side, the more Silicon Valley side, it's about the technology and it's about making cool products. That's what they say. But also that's kind of a money game. That's kind of like they're trying to create a big product that can leverage digitally and like multiply and sell to the world. And so like that's one side of it. And then maybe the other side is like I'm just trying to be secure, I'm just trying to have a solid job and keep my Netflix account and all of that. And that's more of like the wage slave side. And that scares the hell out of me.
That scares me too.
And so it's like, okay, I'm trying to move towards like getting my freedom, but it's not that I'm not going to give up my life just to make money. So that so I mean, like we're trying to find some weird niche, some weird crack where we can have enough time and space, kind of keep on pursuing our interests. I think maybe a lot more people have that mindset now than they used to.
Yeah, especially just seeing how fragile everything really actually is in this country alone. Like just all the like establishments that have been made and all the, I don't know, things that you grew up thinking were super legit turned out to not be as legit as we thought, at least in my perspective.
Yeah.
Everything from like parenthood to like economics and like, I don't know, you name it, I guess.
Yeah. No, I mean, when you're a kid, you really respect authority, or you look up to the adults, you look up to your parents. And if you're healthy, you develop a kind of trust.
Yeah.
You trust your parents, you trust the household you live in, you trust kind of the world that you live in. And as you get older, you kind of realize where your parents are going wrong, or where they're like kind of ignorant or blind, and where maybe your teachers or maybe your church leaders or whatever. And like you kind of, as you get older, you start seeing more and more examples of people kind of being full of themselves or full of shit.
Yeah.
And then by the time you get to where we are, you're our age, you're just like, I feel like I'm seeing the whole world as I'm seeing the whole world as this big Titanic, and there's no one at the helm.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of people are telling me they're at the helm, or they're telling me like, oh, the way that I see the ship and what should happen on the ship is the right way, and clearly I'm going to be the one to, but like no one's really steering the ship.
Yeah.
And
what happens
especially in 2020, that's what we've realized.
Yeah. And what even happens when those people are quote unquote right or at the helm? Like it never really feels, I don't know. I find more comfort sometimes knowing that the world's just kind of full of shit, because then it just allows you to like, I don't know, traverse it, kind of like what you're saying with like finding cracks in it, then you can just like implement things that you see missing as a person into those cracks.
Yeah.
And maybe that's like the secret to trying to be, I don't know, a better individual, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe not a better individual, but just like progressing as a person. And in turn, if you progress as a person, then that's progression just towards humanity in a way. That's how I see it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I see it the same way, and I maybe said this on here, but like I think that one of the most ideal worlds we could live in is one where each individual or every individual has an opportunity to pursue their genuine interests and to kind of like you said, you see something wrong with the world or something that could be different, and maybe you're the only one that sees it. Maybe you're the only one who will make something that will change that, and like so therefore you are the exact person that should do that. And as a human, for the sake of the human race, I want each person to find that thing that they are uniquely set up to do and to do it.
Yeah.
For my sake, selfishly, you know.
Yeah.
And let alone that it's also what is shown to kind of fulfill people.
Yeah, definitely.
Pretty holistically, but you know, these are fantastic ideas, and we live in a super flawed world, and so.
Yeah, I mean, our fucking government just now was talking about how, I don't know if like Trump doesn't admit that he lost, that the republic won't be like as legit as it was before or something. That might just be
The republic's not as legit as it was before already.
All of that. I mean, I don't even know too much to even get into it, so I'm gonna refrain from bringing it up as a topic. But I just more so meant like, it is funny to just see how quickly it can crumble because people just don't agree.
Yeah.
And I think it's really sad. But I also think it's a product of everyone being the age of dinosaurs, you know, that are like involved in our politics. Like they're just so old.
Yeah.
That I don't know, if I was old, I wouldn't want to be a politician anymore. I don't understand that. I don't understand why. I mean,
if it's all you know, like if your whole career has been a sum of like playing this social game.
That's true.
Because that's what it is. It's a social, tribal hierarchy game, where you're like seeking favor with certain members and trying to just keep favor and keep your seat, basically, and so you're trying to keep things in a certain stasis where your job is protected. And so, you know, when it comes to politics, which I don't want to get into because it's boring, but it seems like it falls between either people are thinking short term for their reelection, they're thinking in a 4-year time frame, or if you're someone that can have one of those cozy seats where you can sit for decades and rot on the Congress floor, then you're just trying to keep the party, just keep everything in stasis, like keep your cozy seat, stay in good favor, not shake the boat too much. And like those things are totally separate games from the game of trying to lead a country or trying to keep a country afloat, trying to keep the world afloat. And yeah, I mean, I think I'm an optimist. I think those people are going to be swept away, and I think that long-term thinkers are going to win out.
Yeah. We're definitely in a pivotal moment right now as just human beings, like with everything, you know, like politics, technology, internet, money. It's going to be a weird 10 years, I think. I mean, it's already been a weird year, and I'm almost tired of people being like, yeah, man, it's just been a weird year. Like, I'm kind of over hearing that. Like, I'm like, yeah, we fucking get it. But it is going to be, I think, a really strange, like, 10 years from now. Like, a lot of things are going to change.
Yeah.
And
yeah, see, that's the thing is people are saying, like, whoa, it's been a weird year. Can't wait for it to come back, around. And it's like, brother, we just turned a corner as a civilization.
Yeah.
And now we are that place we were before is gone.
Yeah.
We are now strolling in a new neighborhood, and it is all uncertain.
Yeah.
And like that's.
But I wonder if people felt that in the 70s and 80s and 90s, you know?
Yeah.
Or the 40s especially, like things like the
40s.
Depression and like, I don't know, I was thinking about that the other day too, where I was like thinking we were kind of the first, you know, people to experience a pivotal moment, but I was like, no, that's been the past 100 years.
Yeah.
Like exponentially, like with technology, and yeah.
And to some degree, almost every generation has a moment where they feel truly that they're in a unique position,
Mm-hmm.
that no one's ever been there before. And it's weird because it's like this is a pattern that repeats, but it doesn't take away from the truth of it.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that we are definitely in a unique position that no one else has been in this world before. And like, okay, that is true. But also, it is true that we've been in these types of situations before many times as a species, and that we've overcome it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, both of those have to be brought into consideration, which people either try and bring in one or the other, like the doom and the gloom or the hope. And really, it's both. But I mean, yeah, like the things are different, things are changing. I mean, this kind of brings us into our topic, and how one of the ways that I wanted to set it up for our thinking about it is like we've progressed in a lot in the world of bits, but not in the world of atoms. And so this is an idea. This isn't my idea as much. Like I've learned this a lot from Peter Thiel and Eric Weinstein, but just this idea that like, yeah, we have how Peter Thiel puts it. He's like, imagine the Star Trek universe, like all the technology that's there. You've got the warp drives and portals, transports, and like all of the scarcity problems have been solved in the Star Trek universe. There's no hunger, anything like that. And so like, okay, you have the Star Trek universe. We're a civilization that all we have is the computer from Star Trek. Like all we have is that master artificial intelligence computer and none of the other technology. And so that puts us in this weird place where in a way we've kind of, even in the 40s and the 50s, we kind of saw what the future could look like. Alan Turing talked about artificial intelligence in the 40s, and people wrote books about robots and virtual realities and all these things in the 50s and 60s. So there's a sense that like, okay, we know where we're going. But they also wrote about flying cars, and they wrote about, you know, having space stations and a base on the moon.
Yeah.
They wrote about just innovations in the world of atoms that kind of, in a balanced way, lift up humanity. But we're in this place where, yeah, we've made a ton of innovation in the world of bits, and it's continuing. And then when it comes to the world of atoms, we're basically stuck.
Yeah.
And not completely stuck in every regard, but like in physics, we're stuck. In like particle physics, we're stuck. In chemistry, we're pretty stuck. Like biology is kind of making some innovation, but just in a lot of ways, we're stuck in the world of atoms, and we're progressing faster and faster in the world of bits.
Sometimes I've struggled with like the argument that some scientists want to keep things stuck.
Like certain innovations, like keep them at bay.
Yeah. I don't know enough on that topic to really like start spouting knowledge, but I often wonder if that's even like, why would a scientist want to, you know, hold back new discoveries? But ego is a very real thing. So I mean, maybe it's more historians and like archaeologists that maybe do that just to stay, I don't know, right, quote unquote. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean,
but I don't know if that goes the other way, like for the future.
I think when it comes to real scientific discoveries or technological innovations, I don't think those things can be hidden very easily. And the reason why is because it's so rare for one scientist or one group of scientists in a specific area to have such a lead that they can uncover an innovation and keep it secret without fearing that someone else is going to discover it within a few months. So usually like people across nations are kind of like, they're always, I don't know, like catching up to each other.
Yeah.
And even if you think about the space race, like what happened, we just watched Russia launch was the Sputnik into orbit, and we were like, oh shit. And we were, even though they had a lead on us and they were taking advantage of it, we still caught up to them and kind of superseded them and that. And so yeah, it's kind of hard to think of how, and this is the thing with ideas, is that once they're unleashed, you can't stop them, you can't contain them. And this is why ideas and technologies like Bitcoin are so powerful, because as long as the idea is out there and the network is running, then it's like that is just going to eat away at our previous story about what money is, which is paper given out by the government.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I don't know, like, I think people want to make these innovations. And most of the innovations in history of, or not in history, in our country, in the US, have come from private companies, a lot of them. And like the government's just taken advantage of that.
Yeah.
Like the government's just created this space where the free market can kind of do its things, and then they get to take all the cool technologies that these companies made.
Yeah.
And weaponize them. And so I don't know, but with where we are, there's definitely hidden technologies, but they're not hiding flying cars from us. They're not hiding abundant, 3D printed food, or, these.
Insane. Some Spy Kids stuff.
Yeah.
The microwave.
I don't remember.
They would put just like a card in the microwave and then press a button, and it would be like, it was a McDonald's. It was like a Big Mac and like fries.
What?
Yeah. Like,
dang.
Some spy gear.
That's messed up, man. The Spy Kids, they kept that from humanity because stopped world hunger.
Yeah.
Wow. Dude, I haven't thought about Spy Kids in a long time.
I think that was the premise of the movie, was that the parents kept it from the kids.
Yeah.
And then they and then their parents were captured by Mr. Floop himself. And then they were like, shit, we got to go save him. And then they learned all their cool, spy stuff. Spy Kids 2 was better.
Were you disappointed after that when you like watched that movie and you looked at your parents and you're like, no, it's not me.
Yeah, a little bit.
I'm just a normal kid.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Y'all ain't gonna be abducted by thums. So
yeah.
I remember being scared though of that movie when I was a kid. Now I tried to watch it as an adult, and even smoking marijuana, I could not get through it.
Wait, did you watch 3D?
No.
No.
Maybe that's where I messed up. I did see the 3D one, but I haven't watched it in a long time. There's just like I remember vividly a random part. What's his name? Dude who played Frodo.
Oh,
he's in it for like.
He's like a robot
in
boss
the
battle
last like
guy.
He's like I don't know. Yeah, he's some character in it. It was just funny.
That's
it's
amazing.
funny to think about that. But I mean, hey, that kind of does wrap us oddly into the topic because it's a virtual reality video game.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what.
Did we even mention that that's what we were going to be talking about?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, yeah.
So video games and virtual reality, basically.
Yeah. I don't. Did you have any premise that you wanted to start with it?
Shit. I mean, yeah, basically what I said, just that kind of the mental model is, for me, is that our future visions in the world of bits, in the world of computers and virtual reality and artificial intelligence, a lot of these things seem to be happening. We're making tangible progress each year, and it's progress that you can kind of map. And so that seems to be happening. And then, when you look at the progress on these certain things, like nuclear fusion, that's another one in the world of atoms, like don't seem to be anywhere close to that. And another little thing with this, if you haven't heard of Moore's Law before, have you heard of Moore's Law?
No.
Moore, like Moore. He wasn't a scientist. He was a computer scientist, and I think he worked at like Intel or something back in the day. But Moore's Law is just this observation that about every 18 months, the computing power or the number of transistors on a circuit doubles.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, this just means that Moore's Law has been that every kind of 2 years or 18 months since it has been observed in the 80s, computing power has doubled.
Wow.
And you think about that's an exponential track.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And so, and we're still on it. We still seem to be on it. And we're on it to where when you're in an exponential, you know, you're taking steps, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, bigger steps, bigger steps. And then you get to that curve where each next step is such a huge leap. It's like double or triple what the last step was in the impact. And we're getting close to that curve in the exponential with computing power. And so a lot of these sci-fi ideas, especially when it comes to virtual worlds and video games, what we call them today, I think we're going to be seeing them unfold over the next decade, over the next 2 decades.
Just more elaborate and like more like unfold as just in the capability or like the graphics or something, because like
really everything,
every aspect.
everything at once.
Yeah, I'm honestly not that too impressed or even think it's necessary with the whole graphics thing personally.
Impressed, like you're not impressed with modern graphics?
No, I mean maybe it's because I'm not a console gamer, like, and I have a budget.
Oh, you have a budget PC.
So yeah, like I mean, it's never really been a huge deal that I can't see like the pores in someone's skin or something.
Yeah.
Like, but at the same time, I'm more just impressed with different mechanics and like games within games and
like game worlds,
writing. Yeah, and the world and the concept, how the world like exists, like by itself. I don't know.
Yeah.
Destiny 2 is a cool game that I know we recently kind of talked about playing that. It's just basically combining shooters and a game like WoW. You do raids with friends, you like dungeon dive, but it's very community driven.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that will be a more common thing, because I mean that's probably how they're going to make money and keep going, is making everything just way more community driven. But then at what point are you spending, you know, this amount of time in that game and not in the real world? Like, are we going to get to a point, especially with VR, that we're spending more time with bits, like you said, and less with atoms? Like, is that I often wonder, is that a reality, or is that just like a movie concept, you know, of like, oh, humanity's now sucked into games so much that they're like literally not leaving their house because of it? Because why would you want to? You could fly in the Grand Canyon in a VR game, or you could like go in a haunted house and like play a horror game and really get scared because you're like actually there, like, or you feel like you are, you know? Like, I often wonder if there's ever going to actually be a dystopian, almost like, I don't know.
Like you're kind of getting at right where my thinking has been lately, and this doesn't fully cover a vision of a world with better and better virtual realities. This isn't the only aspect of it, but just one of them is that I think that the incentives to not live your life and to rather focus your energy and time and effort on living your digital life, like those incentives are, like the scale is going to be switching extremely fast. So you've got a game like Destiny 2, where that game is like, it's acting as it's a game, it's acting as your fun, it's an RPG, it's acting as your progression, your sense of accomplishment, of reward.
Yeah.
And it's the social aspect. So now your friends are there.
Yeah.
And so when more and more of our interactions and rewards and friends and fun and everything that we want in life the more and more that that's contained in these digital spaces, the more the incentives will be to kind of live that life. And your brain itself will just, it won't help but put more and more coin on that world, more and more weight on that world, because that world will become more real.
Well, nowadays you're putting even like real money into it.
Yeah.
Because there'll be like a cool skin or a cool Destiny 2.
People make real money doing it too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like plenty of people.
Yeah. I mean, Scotty
Yeah.
did that and does that with
like he did it in game,
RuneScape.
like with RuneScape, and as a streamer.
Yeah.
And
other games. He's a whiz at like money.
Yeah.
And moving money and like, I don't know. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, like Scotty is a perfect example. Like there's a bunch of people who, I mean, just people like us, really.
Yeah.
Nerds who grew up on video games and have a great affinity and attunement and intuition around video games.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they can just kind of jump into, Scotty's way better than us, but he can jump into a new game and be good at it and be interesting and find interesting things about it. Mm-hmm. And just, he has a deep intuition with it. Mm-hmm. And because of that, he is going to do great in the 21st century. Like he's going to do great in this world that's increasingly being taken digital.
Yeah.
And yeah, so if you have, we've got where gamers spend their time, a lot of their time, you're on Discord, talking to your friends, maybe in a voice chat. You're on Twitch, watching your streamers, or maybe streaming yourself. You're on Steam or like whatever kind of gaming apps
Origin,
you have.
all kinds.
Origin, yeah. And so you kind of got these, and then maybe you're jumping back between your social media. Maybe you're on Twitter, connecting with gamers even more on there.
Yeah.
And so you got these digital spaces. But what VR does is VR takes all of these separate digital spaces and it puts them into one place. Mm-hmm. And it makes it to where you can place that on your head.
It still blows my mind. I've never even, I have yet to try it.
Really?
Seriously. Like I'm
like any VR?
Any. I'm scared of it.
Not even at Disney World?
No. The last time I went to Disney World, it was more like 4D rides. They would call them 4D, and
4D.
You would be put in like little carts, and the cart would just like move.
Oh, and it'll just be a screen.
And it'd be a screen, and you'd
That's
get like
lame.
wind blown. Yeah, it was like the very beginning of that concept, though, of like how can we import people into this like different world, essentially. Like,
yeah.
No, I still have yet to try even like the cheap ones, like the cheap VR like phone ones, like
I forgot what it was called.
Vive or something. No, wait, Vive is like I don't know.
Yeah.
That's I'm completely
that was the old name of
showing my age.
one of the VRs.
Oh,
the
okay.
Vive.
I still have yet. I'm scared of it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm scared of loving it too much and not wanting to put it down, and I get scared of new games for that reason. Like I was scared of Cyberpunk for that reason.
Yeah.
And I'm trying hard to take it in waves and not just like completely veg out and become this character that I created. Like mentally, just like make this whole story up and like, but it's a perfect game for that. Like it's designed to be that.
Yeah, like it really just naturally, games they tap into a part of our brain in a certain way. And so this was another thing I was thinking about. Like video games didn't have to exist. Like something about, like if you think about the earliest possible video game, actually the earliest one was like this on a radar on a military computer, like a type of like volleying back and forth.
So it was like
something like a Pong,
but it was similar to Pong.
Yeah, it was pre-Pong though, and then Pong was basically one of the first.
Yeah.
And Pong is like, people would sit on Pong and they'd play it for hours, and people probably still do. Like, I mean, Some people probably still would on their phone.
Yeah.
And it's just this idea that, I don't know, like, we have this a sophisticated brain that's capable of comprehending our environment and making these complex decisions and just surviving and conquering new environments. Like, that's what we're made to do. But something about this Pong game, it just got right into our reward system. It got right, just squeezed right in between the flaps in our brain, and just kind of fit perfectly as something that's satisfying and rewarding, and that's also intuitive. We kind of feel you almost feel it when you're reflecting the ball, and you get a sense.
You make up your own technique almost.
Movement.
Like, everyone probably has their own way of, like, I'm gonna do this move. But it also is like a very primal. I think it's a very primal thing, because at the end of the day, you're just trying to beat the person next to you. You're trying to be a victor. You're trying to you're trying to conquer your opponent, which is like a very primal instinct in humanity, you know, but in like a very I just drew a blank. In a very
just like technological way.
Very civil way. I mean, nowadays it's not that civil because people are yelling over a headset, but like it's still the same concept in majority, not all games. I mean, some games are not that at all, but I feel like Pong was such a hit because you were either trying to beat the computer or you were trying to beat your buddy or someone you didn't like or something. I don't know, like whatever the situation may be. I think that added to the addictive part of it too.
Yeah, there's the competition aspect, and so that social aspect was kind of already there from the beginning in some ways, and just the arcade. But it's also that it's a type of brain state that we're in. You know, if you imagine we're primates on the savannah or whatever, you're in like one of two modes almost, where you're in a more wide-eyed, like observing your environment, observing the horizon type of open mind state, where you're walking around, you're wandering around, you're kind of just sensing your environment. And then you're in another mindset where you're really focused, you're really like zeroing in on something. Maybe you're making a fire, like rubbing two sticks together, something like that, or doing something complex, making a stone spear. Like, you see that there's these tasks that are like, you zoom in, you focus in on one thing, you get a really sensitive feel of your fingers and of like the feedback that the world is giving you with your movements and how you're handling this object or this task that you have.
Yeah.
And so I think it really does tap into that in this type of way, that our brain feels like, okay, I'm solving tasks. I'm in my regular flow of life where I'm focusing intensely on something, and then I'm, I don't know, getting up to go pee and looking out the window, whatever gamers are doing, going to Taco Bell, and so yeah, like that mindset, like I think about that sometimes, and I really feel that video games, it's tapping into that, the reward system, like we were saying, the social system. And so we're naming all of these primitive incentives, natural incentives that are built into our brain, and how they're being encapsulated in digital worlds. And so, video games, they didn't have to exist, but we're tapping into these natural incentives. We're kind of bringing them into digital space, all starting with Pong. And then now the culmination of that is where, with VR and technologies that are kind of going to be used with VR, haptic feedback technologies, basically. Yeah, we're bringing all this stuff together, essentially.
I would really love to explore the psychology behind VR chat. Have you seen that game?
VR chat?
Yeah,
no.
Where you
is it like
you can import any character. You could be Mike Wazowski talking to like some anime character.
Oh.
But it's your voice. And you're walking around and looking around, and like you could literally be whatever, like I really want to know the psychology behind that, because it makes for very funny internet videos, because there's like certain characters interacting with each other that you would never think about. But even then, it's like, Why is that so appealing? And I don't know. Yeah, the psychology behind VR is really cool. And what's interesting too is people getting like vertigo from it. I wonder if we'll just
Yeah.
evolve, you know? I wonder if like people will just like switch that off. They'll be sick to their stomach, but they're just like, I don't want to leave this place, and they just
Yeah.
slowly over time evolve like to where that doesn't exist, and then they're just plugged in. Like,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lab, Dr. Andrew Huberman, who studies like different types of brain states, especially around stress. They use VR in his lab. He talks about using VR like
cool.
shark. Well, there's like vertigo, not vertigo, like fear of heights type ones where you're walking along a ledge.
Tyler was uh, telling me Philip got one, and they've been playing that, and that's the exact one they play all the time.
Really, the
It's
like
the height.
balancing
Yeah, the
on
balancing
heights.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, you can do that, and you can feel the real kind of rush of that fear of heights come about you. And they've got shark where you're in a shark cage for another one, but that was actually that's like a real video, like a 360 video of like real
Wow.
sharks, and you're just like, kind of tapping into it
Yeah.
with your headset, and it feels like you're in the cage.
Yeah.
And yeah, and they're not testing VR. The lab isn't experimenting VR. They're experimenting on stress brain states. So they're literally using technology just to make you go into what would otherwise be a naturally occurring fear response. And so it's pretty interesting. It's kind of in that same vein. Another thing that I thought of talking about VR chat is, well, like there's a weekly. I'm not sure if they're doing it right now, but I've watched them. There's been these weekly Bitcoin VR meetups called Reckless VR meetups, where you can watch it like on your phone on Twitter. They live stream it, and you can like look around. You're not in VR yourself, and it'll be a room full of people, and there'll be a speaker and like an interviewer.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they'll
do
sit
that
down.
They do that with stand up too.
Okay.
There's like a game where you do stand up in front of other people as
In VR.
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. So yeah, so it's just like a live speech, a live conference type of thing. But it's cool in these Bitcoiners. What's interesting is that a lot of them are pseudonymous. So a lot of them their identities are hidden, and they go through extreme lengths to keep their identity hidden.
That's cool.
And instead they go under just like a pseudonym. And so in the VR space, they have these social relationships. Like they'll go to the VR meetup and then afterwards go to the VR bar and talk with all their Bitcoiner friends.
Yeah.
And even though they don't know who they are, who each other is, but they trust each other and they have a relationship.
Yeah.
Kind of like how you can play a game with someone and you build up a relationship and a trust with them, even though you may only know their gamer tag.
Yeah.
You don't know their real name. And so, yeah, I think this highlights a unique, well, first of all, that VR can fill a lot of our social desires. And to a pretty deep degree.
Is that dangerous though?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess everything is dangerous without moderation, but I wonder if it'll ever like just lead to crazy amounts.
What's
of
the case
problems.
for moderation? Why should you moderate? Like, and here's the other aspect. We've kind of been talking about video games and like kind of degenerate things that are kind of concerning. But another aspect that I think about is work and productivity.
Yeah.
Like some people will use this technology for the exact opposite as others.
Yeah.
While others are like sinking their time and throwing their life away, some are going to become hyper productive.
Yeah, true.
Like I think about if I could create a VR coding environment with like 4 windows in front of me and like, everything I need to search, and I can have a great view.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't even need to be a remote worker or I don't know, any of those things that people dream about. Like I could chill in my VR space and just like code all day and listen to music and like, roll my chair around and then respond to a Discord message.
Yeah.
And, so people are going to make spaces like that. Companies are going to be created with fully distributed staff that all where the whole company building exists as just a user interface in a VR space.
I think I'm just more of a nature boy. Like I'm more of like my mind is craves that like interaction of just like taking the real world in as it like is coming at me. And if I were to be in like a virtual world of it, I would probably be depressed. Like if I'm honestly thinking about it, you know, like, and that's just like the difference I think between my brain and other people's brains, and like other people feel the same way I do too. But that, I guess that's why my brain it immediately goes to like, oh no, that might be bad. Like,
yeah, no, I mean, same. Like, I don't want to live my life in a VR space.
True.
Like,
but I can see what you're saying, that it like there are ways to work within VR that like should probably be explored more. Like, and I'm sure that it will be.
well, work and play and get help and get therapy and, you know, like
Therapy
lots
would be
of
kinda
good
cool.
things
Yeah.
can happen and are going to be enabled by these just more usable virtual spaces. But yeah, it's going to come with the major trade-offs.
Because then you're not like physically with those people though. So it's like, what happens when you take, what kind of emotions are you going to feel when you take those goggles off, you know? And then you're like looking around and you're just like alone.
Yeah.
And then you're like
In a
oh,
dump
fuck.
apartment.
Yeah.
And people already do this.
Yeah.
Like, there's early adopters of this lifestyle.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
I
I've
used to
been
work
a part of it. Like,
well, I know.
Like,
I mean, like you maybe have had like
in a small
degenerate gaming
way.
days, but
in a small way.
like I used to work with this lady at Panera, where she played WoW,
Yeah.
and she would come. She worked like 3 to close every night, and so worked like 3 to 10 or something, and she would get home at 10 and basically like play WoW like all night and then sleep during the day and then show back up to work. And that was just like her entire life. She would do that, and when she had her 2 days off, she would go on a full 2-day bender and order food in.
Yeah.
And like that was her life. She would play WoW, and then she would work so that she had money so that she could live, so that she could play WoW.
Yeah.
And so that's the lifestyle that's going to be increasingly adopted, where it's like you do the minimum amount needed so that you can spend the maximum amount of time in this virtual world, because that's where you get the most reward. And I can't even imagine the dynamics that are going to be at play. You know, are companies going to take advantage of this? Are they going to sell you package deals to where, you know, you can live in the pod and spend all day in the virtual?
Dude, they already do. Like you said, there's already early adopters of the lifestyle. There's already early adopters of like the encouragement of like Destiny 2 does that for sure. For sure does that.
Yeah.
Like there's always something new to do in that game that requires a lot of time and a lot of community time too. Like you have to do with other people as well to get like the cool drops or like this weapon or that piece of armor, or like you have to spend time. You don't have to, but if you really want to progress in the game, you have to spend time. And there's like,
and see, that's always when it comes to MMOs. That's always the currency. That's the real currency is time. And like people say grinding, like, oh well, there's grinding, or you just have to grind this. And what that means is you just have to spend time doing something monotonous in this virtual world in order to progress to this next level. Well, that's exactly how the real world works. Is like you want to get good at this, you have to spend time practicing your dribble. It's monotonous, you know, but you'll level up and you'll get better at doing it. And now, of course, video games, they just have the perfect pace of the grind and the perfect feedback and all of that. And the world isn't always like that, but I mean, it's interesting, and they want time, and time is the most scarce. It's the most scarce asset in the world.
It's the most important asset too.
Yeah. And that's why they're able to monetize it so well, because that's what they're doing. They're monetizing your time. I mean, I know I downloaded Destiny 2 for free. I didn't pay for it.
I played it for free for like months, and then I finally bought it.
Yeah,
because I thought it was worth it. But I didn't buy it for a long time, and they still can hook you. It's free, and that's like part of it where they're like, well, it's free, so like, what do you got to lose? And then you're losing time
Yeah.
playing it. But that's also why I've been for years just been a fan of like flick shooters, like FPS games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Call of Duty is kind of a bad example, but like games similar to that, because it does feel like a game you can kind of just, if you want to get really good, you can pick it up and play forever, or you can just pick it up, play a couple games with friends, put it down. Same with sports games. I've never been a big fan of sports games, but I imagine, you know, those type of games you can just pick them up, play them, competitive, you know, get your fix of like beating someone or losing someone. But and then if you want to be a master, you spend time perfecting muscle memory and like hand-eye coordination and all that. But like, I think that's why I've always been a bigger fan of more competitive FPS games, because I didn't feel like I had to grind really hard for something, you know, which some people get more. I mean, most people get more of a reward, sense of reward. I mean, that's why it exists, like grinding. But I, for some reason, sometimes don't. But
yeah, it's different personalities. They get different things, and I think with the competitive games, that really gets at like men and like our natural competitive tendencies and desire for that fix and that high.
Yeah.
You know, but nonetheless, I mean, there's something for everyone, meaning that there's like a primal inclination that everyone will find hooked in some virtual world.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of mentioned it before. It's Cyberpunk.
Mm-hmm.
That was something I kind of want to talk about. Have you played much of that game?
I still haven't progressed a lot into it.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly what I have been doing is just exploring the world and stealing vehicles and doing everything I can't do in the real world, or that I would get in trouble for in the real world.
Yeah.
But I haven't really been playing the story a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to really get the the cat's not going to be picked up on the mic, but she's very active right now.
Yeah.
Hey, don't go in there. Or she can go in there.
Well, yeah.
That's fine. But no, I haven't completed it yet.
Okay. Yeah, obviously it's a cluster.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah, and there's still bugs going on with it
Yeah.
too. Like the last I checked, there's still some bugs, and I feel bad for all the console people.
I mean, I got a
there.
refund, so
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
they refunded everyone on the PlayStation Store. Who bought it.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Do you still have it?
No.
Oh, okay.
So I got my $60 back. So
word. That's good. That's insane though. Has that ever happened?
it's never happened.
That's never happened in a video.
Dude, it was unplayable on console. It was like it would drop to 13 frames a second. Some parts, like the first driving shooting scene you do, like you can't aim. It's so choppy. Yeah.
I love that shit though. I love when games break and they just like, I love it because it makes for the best. It just, I don't know. It goes back to then, like people's brains are like, this isn't supposed to be happening. Like,
yeah.
This isn't supposed to be
There's
happening.
this cognitive dissonance. Like, it's supposed to be real. It's supposed to seem real. It's not like that if it's going that slow. And no, yeah, I mean that's the frustration, but
the only things
it's
that
funny how much they fucked it up.
Yeah, the only thing I've seen an abundance of is T-poses. People just being like, characters will just be talking and then they'll suddenly just be like,
just getting a cross pose.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, their arms will shoot up and they'll do that. They won't walk. They'll just like
float away,
or they'll like say something and they'll be walking, but they'll be like going back, like moonwalking essentially. Just like really like Skyrim-esque bugs.
Yeah.
Very, very Skyrim like buggy.
Yeah. I mean it's so Cyberpunk kind of taps into this other idea that around video games and virtual worlds that I want to talk about, but like it's interesting, like Cyberpunk is the newest version of this type of game where, you know, a company spends multiple years trying to build this really deep elaborate world with a big story and all of that. And before, like you mentioned Skyrim, like Skyrim is one. The Witcher 3 is one that I really like.
Yeah.
With just these huge, very realistic worlds. You've got people with populations, with people doing things, their own stories and quests and economies and all of this stuff. And this is kind of like, okay, well, Cyberpunk, they messed it up. Mm-hmm. They rushed it in certain parts. They cut out a bunch of content. It was a disaster. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of this classic story with a lot of game companies where upper management was just not in good communication with the developers and in good coordination with what was realistic and what needed to be done and all of that.
Too busy trying to get Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, no, like really, they were marketing it.
Which that's
making promises.
Yeah, that's an interesting fact an interesting, like, a popular thing that's becoming the norm I see in these big games is that it's like what Hollywood actor can you get to be in your game now?
Yeah.
Like the Death Stranding is a game that had like
oh yeah
I don't know his name, but he's like from like
Walking Dead.
Yeah, and like other people I should have looked up lists.
Freaking
like,
Jack Bauer.
Yeah.
Or whatever in Call of Duty probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, doing stuff like that too. I'm sure that their head marketing team was more stoked on, holy shit, we got Keanu Reeves to be in this game. Like,
yeah.
Instead of,
that's what they're focusing on.
Yeah.
That and the aesthetics and the look.
Yeah.
A lot. And
all it made me want to, I didn't mean to cut you off, but all it made me want to do is play the actual tabletop game. Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Like that's really
based off of.
It made me want it, and that's kind of why I'm exploring the world. I'm playing it like I would be playing the tabletop. Yeah. Like I'm just kind of like talking to NPCs, looking at side quests, like world exploring, making up my own kind of story in my head,
Yeah.
It really just made me want to, which that's a whole topic we could talk about in the future too, tabletop games. But
totally,
because I'm sure that we could make a lot of, I don't know,
actually
similarities, but also not similarities.
Yeah, and I do have a weird thing that I'm actually experiment I'm trying in my life right now that has to do with tabletop RPGs,
really?
Which we could talk about. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, we'll do that in the future. Sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I mean, it's cool what you're saying. Like, you want to, and this is what I want. Like, I have a mixed relationship with video games where obviously I'm talking about all of these ideas and I have this kind of fear and respect for what it is and for how my time can kind of get lost in it. And like, I want to have a relationship where it's something that enriches my life and makes me more creative and more energetic, or can act as a positive. It's been hard to be social this year. It's been hard to be around my friends.
Yeah.
And, we've even done this podcast over Zoom, and that's a virtual space.
Yeah.
And so, like, I want to use these things to their advantages and get enjoyment out of them, hopefully without the downsides. And, like, I don't know, like, we'll see how that goes with time. But,
yeah,
like, I'm generally getting more and more guarded with my time. But kind of jumping back to Cyberpunk, or just that type of elaborate game world. I might have talked about this before, I don't remember, but it kind of harkens back to this idea that exists kind of in coding or in open source code. There's a book called The Cathedral and the Bazaar, which is it's kind of this example of open source versus closed source code. And all that means is just code or programs or digital tools, software that has been made in a collaborative effort and is free and is posted online for anyone to use and reuse, or something that's made by a company like Windows operating system is closed source. You can't go look up that code online. And so, it was this kind of, there's this split in computing and software where kind of more and more people were making open source stuff, compared to being in companies making closed source software. And there's this movement where, and out of that came Linux, which came Android. Like, so much is based off of Linux. People have no idea how much of our modern computing
I don't. I have zero.
Yeah, and that came from the free open software world. And because that open free software exists, creators or entrepreneurs or whatever were able to come around, and instead of having to develop a bunch of software on their own and then build their product, they were able to take software that was open source, put it together in a unique way, build a new service or product or whatever. And so, but anyway, so the idea was that you've got a company like Microsoft building Windows, and Windows is like this cathedral. It's this very specifically designed, perfectly designed by architects and artists, and it brings together all of these different expertises, all of these. You've got the masonry and the stained glass and just everything that comes together to build a cathedral. And so that's what it's like making Windows. Got this huge, enormous project it'll take a long time and tons of hours and tons of different expertise, and it's kind of this hierarchical top-down plan. And then open source is like the bazaar. It's fully bottom up. It's like everyone's kind of acting out of their own incentives of what they want to do, and from the ground up, from each of their actions, the cumulative total of it creates this elaborate bazaar, this new space. And in the world of video games, almost everything we've seen is cathedrals. We've only seen cathedrals, and Cyberpunk is the newest cathedral. There's just is a disaster, really. They didn't do a very good job. They didn't respect.
It was rushed.
Yeah, it was rushed.
Yeah.
And now you've got a bunk ass looking cathedral for $60 that this company spent 7 years on.
Yeah, just imagine becoming a poster child for what not to do in that type of game. That would suck. That would just suck to spend that much time and money and resources and marketing
and it's the developers that get like the most junior developers that get screwed because they get hired on,
and like people are just like won't shut up about how bad of a game it is, like us which like, and I mean it's true, but
we're not being that harsh.
No, yeah, but I mean like developers get the flack, and it's like, well, it's not their fault. Like, not their fault at all. Like, those people are wizards. Those people are like shaping like kids' future of like entertainment, and like I can't imagine being a kid right now with all the games that are coming out, and like because I remember when we were kids, it was like I got a Nintendo 64 for Christmas. Like, I got Star Fox, and that blew my mind. I was like, what the fuck? You could fly in a spaceship? Like, and it wasn't even...
It was like linear levels.
Yeah, like it literally was not anything like compared to what it is now.
Yeah.
And even then, hours.
You get glued
days.
For hours.
Dig Dug even was like my shit. Like,
dude,
just
Dig Dug is awesome.
Galaga, like any of those games, like... And then I don't know. Then what? You're like, nowadays you're 11 and playing Minecraft. Like, you can literally just build a world.
Yeah.
You can become you could become an architect inside of an engine. Like,
well, yeah, and Minecraft was actually just what I was going to mention. Minecraft is bizarre. Almost every game, you think about what game is a platform rather than a product, rather than
like a sandbox. Like,
something that other people come along and build stuff on top of it, something that gets better as more people use it, something that has built-in network effects, basically. And Minecraft is that. Minecraft started as an alpha demo of just blocks being generated at random with a random seed, and then made by one guy. And then he open sourced it and released it and built community and worked with people, and people built it out into a game, and that game built out into more games, and now it's the biggest. It's a franchise. It's a whole platform. People build games on top of it. Like, they create games inside of it. They use it to create little movies, and there's whole YouTube series of people acting out movies in Minecraft, and like,
or they just build like structures, like just
Yeah, huge.
like New York,
Oh,
like
and check. I think I might have mentioned this before, but there's a Library of Alexandria server in Minecraft that's being used to, I mean, store the world's information, but like it's being used like in almost a humanitarian way to like to show and protect and store information that's considered illegal in some countries.
wow, that's cool.
And so yeah, it's this. You imagine the server. You're running the Library of Alexandria server, and you've got a copy of all of this knowledge that people stored in Minecraft.
Yeah, that's
of
insane.
all things.
Yeah, like what would happen if humanity, like, 98% of humanity is wiped out, and that knowledge goes away, and then suddenly you stumble upon you're like, wow, I remember the old days.
Yeah.
And then you boot up Minecraft and you just like happen to get in that server, and then you find all this hidden human knowledge in a Minecraft server.
Yeah, I mean that could if somehow you could just you had the hard drives stored away and we wiped ourselves out and lost our memory as a species, you could save the next humans that have to come along and rebuild. You could save them 1,000 years just by giving them that Minecraft server.
And then you're this dude with blue pants and a turquoise shirt, and you're like got a pickaxe, and you're just like, dude, yeah, that's crazy.
No,
it's
I
cool
mean,
that you can make like actual machines and engines in that game too.
Yeah,
like,
you can make a computer.
Yeah, they've created like pistons and like all kinds of like moving parts that make other things flow and exist and thrive. And I wonder if there's gonna be I'm sure there is, the more technology advances, like a different version of Minecraft, but a more what Cyberpunk was supposed to be, like graphics wise. Like I wonder if 100 years from now, Minecraft, whatever it is in the future, it'll just look like me and you.
Yeah.
But you can like do exactly what you do in Minecraft.
No, and once again you're getting right to where I was getting, which is that like Minecraft is this early iteration of a open source platform video game. And I think that it seems that technology works this way, that it seems inevitable that someone is going to create and own the monopoly on virtual game worlds. That someone's going to make the Facebook of game platforms at which your shooters, your racers, your platformers, your social, your porn, where everything might be built into that one single platform. And that maybe it would be open source. I would hope. I think that would be better. But maybe some company is behind it or controls it, and it just grows and grows in value as more people use it and as more people contribute to it.
Yeah.
And that I think something like that could be a behemoth of just a vampire for people's time.
Yeah.
And
I would sink time into it.
Yeah, and it'll be, what's scary about it too is that it will be profitable. If it really does become the Facebook, it does become a network, basically, a monopoly. It will be valuable and almost maybe necessary to use it, to participate in it.
Yeah.
And that's where that's when you have an incentive like that, where the new Facebook exists and it's in VR, like all of the rewards are they start being in your VR headset. They start being in your computer. All of the things to do, all of the things you desire, all of the things you envision in your future, they're just increasingly being brought into these digital spaces. And that's what I'm kind of like on the lookout for is what that will be. And some people think, some people will laugh at me if they know about it and they hear I'm saying this, but some people think something like Star Citizen will be this, where Star Citizen is kind of like a big behemoth sci-fi massively like multiplayer online game.
EVE Online or something like that.
Kind of like that.
Yeah.
And it's incredible graphics and first person, and it was bootstrapped kind of as an open source type of effort.
It's basically a game that, like, for those who don't know, it's a game that you essentially can do pretty much you can trade. Can you like trade? You have
Well,
currency.
it's
You
right
can.
now it's a tech demo.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, like it's in a such an early release where you can kind of go around in some of the locations and do
Mm.
side missions, and there's only 50 players per server.
Okay.
But so it's not there by any means, but they're building it as the super slick giant MMO that's also an open source platform.
Hmm.
And so that's something that I
So it's
look
gonna
at
be, yeah, a
and I'm
giant
like,
that's gonna take over these other MMO games in the future. Is what
I
it
think
looks
so.
like. Is what it looks like.
It could be this or just something with this kind of model. It
Hmm.
can just, as soon as 1 million people start playing it, and then 10,000 of those 1 million people are developers and they start iterating and coming up with ideas and adding more content and adding more campaigns, and
Yeah.
it'll be mind-boggling. And you mentioned something else I wanted to talk about, Eve Online.
Hmm.
I think that's an example of that doesn't have the graphics of Star Citizen, but I think that's a supreme example of what type of virtual worlds we could be interacting with in the future.
Yeah, because people make money off of that game, don't they? Like they
Yeah.
just like. I don't know too much about it. I just know that it's huge. A lot of people play it. It's essentially a second life to majority of people. Like most video
Yeah.
games are a second life, but like it's definitely like
Hmm.
if you're gonna have if you want a second life that feels realistic, play something like Eve Online.
Yeah, it's a Second Life that exists in menus
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
in deep space. Like, you don't have a character that walks around in that game. You're either
Okay.
controlling a singular ship or a group of ships, or you're in menus on a space station or
Okay.
something like that. But now the game is enormous. The
Hmm.
game is sprawling, and how it works is it's a player-led, player-driven open space economy. Players create, like, the game doesn't have a ton of structure for you. Like, the game world as it started out, it was a huge empty galaxy with space stations, with NPCs, and kind of a general backstory. And they had gates, stargates that you would jump to and from.
Yeah.
And then you could, if you're a player playing the game, like I played free trials and stuff when I was younger, and I've been curious about it just as like someone who's interested in digital economies
Yeah.
since. But if you're just playing the game, you start out, you have a little junker ship,
Hmm.
you're taking missions at space stations, and kind of you're getting specific weapons and specific mining, and you mine resources and sell it, and it's kind of like, okay, this is a cool little game. I'm gonna upgrade my ship and all of that, and then you get to a point where you can watch, like, you can go on YouTube and watch people's diaries of playing Eve
Wow.
and doing some of these battles where they will be in control of multiple fleets of ships, a part of a player corporation, going out and doing missions. And the currency in the game is pegged, not pegged, like loosely pegged to the dollar.
Hmm.
So like you can buy and sell it with real money. And one of the standout events in the game history that got all the news that anyone might have heard of is these wars, these huge battles that ended up happening, like in, I don't remember what year, but there's this one called the Fountain War. You can watch a bunch of YouTube videos on it, where basically two of the biggest corporations in the game, like player-run organizations in the game, one of them just had an incentive and an advantage to attack one in this certain spot to kind of take over these few solar
Dang.
systems because they have resources or whatever.
So it wasn't really a part of the game per
No,
se.
no, it was
Or
purely player driven. It was
That's
one player
sick.
and their super corporation with 1,000+ members,
Hmm.
all deciding to attack another player run
So
organization.
they had to
with
bring it
1,000+
up
members.
probably like as a council and be like,
Yeah.
do we really want to do this? Do we want to go? I'm bringing this idea forward. Like, is everyone in agreement?
Hmm.
Maybe some people weren't. Maybe some people were, and then that's
Yeah.
that's cool.
And they had to create a battle plan and organization and all of this stuff. And basically, and you can watch diaries of this, like there's people that live streamed it and then went back over and gave commentary. And I
Wow.
watched one, And you can hardly understand what he's saying.
Right.
He's just talking about the subtleties, like, yeah, when we jump in here, they've got these things which block the jump gates for our, for these types of cruisers, so we have to take them out with these types of bombs. And the tricky thing with that is that, and it's just these individual player captains that leading these fleets that all have different plans. And it culminates in this battle, in this one single solar system in the game, where there's 3,200 players or something like that, all on this server, battling it out with tens of thousands of ships.
Holy shit.
For 20 plus hours. And what ends up happening at the end of it, over $300,000 of value was just destroyed. Meaning that if you had sold like all the ships that destroyed for US dollars, you would have gotten $300,000 for
burned all of it.
Yeah. And so they just came together, and like the game, like there's the biggest ship you can have is called a Titan, and a Titan itself can be a jump gate or whatever. And only like 16 Titans had ever been destroyed in the whole history of the game up until that point. And then in that one battle, there was like 20. So it was like all of these records were broken.
Yeah.
And there's just this huge war that came out. And
Dude,
that's happened again throughout the history, where these wars just break out and a ton of value is destroyed. And it's all player driven. And they're all like, they're kind of role playing in a sense, but they're also watching over their digital assets.
Yeah.
And they're making strategic economic decisions. How do I increase my asset holdings? How do I protect myself from risk? They think about their social and diplomatic relationships within the game, if they're at risk, if they can climb the hierarchy.
Yeah.
And the complexity and just the effort that it takes to play this goddamn game, you're living a whole other life.
Well, yeah, it's so realistic.
It's stressful.
I'm sure that's what real war is like. I mean, that's why, like, I try to avoid the whole, budget debates and all that. Like, I don't fucking know what they're going to be, what they need and what they don't need to be spending on involving, like, war stuff, Like, there's so much that goes into it that game, I'm sure, highlights, realistic elements in actual real war. And that kind of brings...
Well, yeah, there's just, like, these patterns that will happen at a low level, even in play and even in a virtual world, but might then occur in real ways. Because it's really those basic incentives of people, of fear and of greed, of people trying to protect what they have. And either they do that as a group trying to defeat another group, or they do it as an individual betraying their own group, or, it's just what happens, when you have skin in the game and you're trying to protect it. Yeah. And that's war, basically. And so Eve is a game where all this bullshit is happening all the time. And, it's like, I was talking to a friend recently, asking him about Eve, and he just laughed. He's like, if I wanted to spend all day in spreadsheets and like doing like risk reward calculations, like I'm just going to go be a full-time trader or like just go spend all my time in the markets, the real markets. Yeah. It's like, that kind of makes sense. Like that's basically what you're doing when you play a game like that. You're going to be a portfolio manager for digital spaceships and digital virtual spaceship assets. And that's what these people are that play this game, and they make livings doing it.
That brings me to a thought I had one time. What if war was replaced with wars like that? What if in the future all of humanity decided they're like, you know what? It is wrong to kill each other in mass amounts. Like, what if we just designed a game that felt real, and it was a simulated war, grand scale. Whoever was the victor gets a certain amount of whatever they're wanting. That's how they solve
that's some kind of
world issues.
That's some kind of sci-fi.
Is that a sci-fi concept?
Like concept, like I'm thinking like not Hunger Games, but or just that basically like the competing nations would, instead of, I think Maze Runner maybe is this, or like instead of like fighting real wars, they agree upon some competition at which to solve their conflicts. No, and I think that's an intriguing idea.
It would be really cool to have a VR, like ultimate VR, like you're on a treadmill VR, and then you're just, dude, like thinking about it, just like 10,000 against 10,000, and that's kind of what it would be. That's like where my brain goes to, when I'm thinking of like a VR war, like a
Well, either way, those are going to exist for fun.
yeah, exactly. It would just be so funny, I think, to see that world issues being solved with video games.
I think one idea that kind of goes along with this that I've considered. So follow me here. If we end up in a hyper Bitcoinized world, or basically if Bitcoin or something like Bitcoin became the global reserve currency. So like right now, gold is the global reserve currency.
Mm-hmm.
Or no, well, the dollar is. That's what they tell you. The dollar used to be pegged to gold. But if you look at what real money is what nations and governments trade between each other. And what do they trade? It's gold.
Wow.
And so Bitcoin, like the goal of Bitcoin, there's only ever one real, true, hard, scarce money that kind of exists in the world that everyone agrees on. And so Bitcoin's vying for that spot, And so basically if Bitcoin gets that spot, each Bitcoin will be worth greater than 10 million and we'll have an absolute scarce unit of value to kind of peg everything in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in that situation or something like that, you think about war and the incentive to go to war. Even though people go to war for conflicts and then protect themselves and all those things that we talk about, but a lot of it is economics. A lot of it is about reward, risk and reward. And in a perfect example, in World War II, we fight this huge war. When we defeat Germany, we go and we take all their gold. We march into their city. We go to their vault. They go to their central bank. And we take their gold. That's what we did. Like, we beat you.
Yeah.
You're ours now. Now give us your gold.
Yeah.
And at the end of World War II, we had the what is it called? Bretton Woods Convention, where basically we decided, like, okay, the dollar will become the global reserve currency.
Wow.
And so you have this world where, like, we won the big war, we took all the gold, and now we get to have the king currency that everyone else has to borrow into and pay back into, and we control it and we can print it.
That's scary, man.
It's a good situation.
It's good, but now it's scary right now. It's scary to think about that.
Yeah. But no, of course, in a Bitcoin world, what happens is there's no more reward. There's no more bank to go into to take their gold. There's also no single entity or country that can control Bitcoin as a network. Like, they can hold Bitcoins, and if the world agrees on that as the central store of value, then those Bitcoins will be valuable. So all they can do is buy. All you can really do is buy and hold your stake in that world. And so you can imagine the incentives for direct invasion and attack are almost zero.
Yeah.
The incentive for information war as it is just growing and growing, and more of the conflicts are being brought into the digital realm, the information realm. And yeah, and so you really could imagine, to solve conflicts, that we would agree on competition or wagers, or just where you could place Bitcoin, you could place your opt in and place your scarce currency on the line and kind of like let it play out, I guess. So you could imagine something like that happening. But like, either way, in that world, if you invade a country and you defeat them and you try and take their Bitcoin, they might have their Bitcoin in a digital vault with 100 signatures, where those 100 signatures are distributed across the globe, and they're hidden in images and hidden in buried hard drives.
Wow,
and encrypted into all sorts of, and you just, like, it's not possible to do it. And what's crazy is that any individual will have that defensive power. And so, and I guess just that aspect of money being brought into the digital world. If you've got the platform, if you've got the Star Citizen that exists, that that will blur the lines even more. Your currency that you use to pay your rent, you'll carry it into your virtual war, your virtual,
Yeah.
territory, and trade it with your friends and get virtual armor for it and all of this stuff. And so I mean, we're kind of just talking about a bunch of disparate science fiction ideas, but I think a lot of these are really tapping into the dynamics at play for how technology is progressing, the incentives within us that we talked about of why it's beneficial to interact with these worlds.
And it's an ancient incentive.
Yeah.
It's just a different avenue, a different way to approach it.
Yeah.
That's the most interesting thing for me. It's just how everything involved with video games is very primal, but it feels futuristic because it has that skin of you're using a computer, but it's like everything that you're getting from it is primal.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. I mean, we're in a weird time. Like, here we are, and we're starting this thing. Not that we have any expectations. This podcast, we're just trying to have fun and talk about cool ideas. But we are, more and more of our skills and effort and time and projects are being melded into the digital world.
Yeah.
Ourselves, and so I don't know what these spaces are going to be like, and I don't know how much they're going to integrate into our world. But I guess my hope and my focus is going to be, like I was saying earlier, protect my time to get the benefits out of this and to watch where I'm being taken advantage of. And you can't fight against technology. You can't be a Luddite, but you also don't want to be swept away by it. So it's being pragmatic and aware that these things are happening and that they're dangerous, but also, how do I take advantage of it? And so maybe that's where I am.
Maybe that'd be a cool future episode to discuss, in our opinions, what do we think would happen if technology suddenly ceased? As in, what if, in the event of something like an EMP or mass hacking, or to the point where the grid was just gone? What would with the things that we do now with technology and games, how would we act afterwards? But that opens up a whole I'm sure at least 45 minutes of discussion about that. I've thought about that though too.
It's interesting.
What society would look like without it after we've had it so far.
Yeah, that's that's a comedy right there or something.
Yeah.
Or a sitcom, Life, where you're sent back in the cave, but you were spending every day on Discord eating Doritos and drinking Mountain Dew, but now you're in the cave surviving.
Yeah, or in just tents or something, having tent cities everywhere.
Yeah, I mean
I think there would be more murder and more babies.
Yeah.
There'd be more conflict and more, I don't know, physical stuff going on, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, I thought for a minute in 2020, I thought we were about to be in a situation like that. Not that the power grid was going to go down, but I was afraid that some other essential parts of the supply chain were going to break down. And when you have that happen in a city, especially if it's food, on Monday, everything's normal. And by Tuesday night or by Wednesday morning, there's groups of people raiding houses.
Yeah.
You go from normal to post-apocalyptic RPG in 2 days.
Yeah.
If you're in the middle of a city and the supply chain breaks down.
Yeah.
And luckily that didn't happen. I hope that doesn't happen. But back to things being fragile. Our supply chains are fragile. Our power grid is pretty fragile.
I mean, fucking here in Oklahoma, you get a little bit of wind and the power's out for 3 days.
Yeah, it's gone out so many times lately.
Yeah.
And
which is kind of weird. It's not as weird as I think it is, but my brain immediately is
Yeah.
Strange.
Okay, well, this is giving me another idea of we need to talk about prepper and prepping.
Could that fall into conspiracy also? Should we maybe just tackle both? Or
I mean, I think I don't remember what conspiracy we talked about. We talked about some, but yeah, I mean, we could do that. Like, I have a lot of. I wouldn't say I'm a prepper.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's different.
But I'm a prepper and prep.
There's a different type of prepping. Like, there's all kinds of different types. I would say you're probably a financial prepper, which a lot of people should, or digitally financially a prepper.
Yeah, like I'm prepared for it. Let's just say I have things with computers and things with my digital life and digital identity and privacy and the internet. Like, I have things set up in case of emergency.
Yeah.
And almost no one does that. And so, like, that's one aspect that I have thought about. But also, I think about it a lot in the physical realm. I'm not doing anything yet.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, yeah, as you talk about the fragility in the system, you realize, and this is just the prepper kind of theory, the prepper case for why you should be a prepper, is look around, look at the fragility. How many separate individual things are breakable, and if they broke within 48 hours, within 3 days, you would be in direct physical danger.
Yeah.
If you were not prepared.
Yeah.
And so I like thinking about those situations. For some reason, that's fun.
Yeah. It's strategic.
Yeah. But I mean, nonetheless, we're here. World seems to be holding itself together for the time being.
It's
we're playing games
now.
Yeah.
That we're recording this.
Yeah. It is the second day of 2021.
Yeah. Yep. Feels like a week's gone by for me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Cool. So I'm trying to think if we touched on a lot.
Yeah.
We didn't talk at all about brain machine interfaces or haptic feedback, which I want to talk about, but I'm sure that will be sprinkled in across.
Oh yeah, we could talk about it again too. We could always have two-parters about the same subject if we want, you know.
Yeah.
Like, maybe in this next week we can decide if we want to do two-part of it, because I'm interested in that. That's not something I really have a lot of knowledge on, so maybe we could do an episode of bringing two things, you know, one thing that you know, one thing I know, talk about it type of thing.
Yeah.
For the next one.
Okay.
Or something.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, so if y'all listen up to this point, thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching.
You got feedback, hit us up on Twitter or wherever. Can you leave comments or leave? I guess there's no interface with us except for the Twitter.
Yeah.
Because we'll have the podcast website, but
yeah, and on the podcast app you can leave reviews
and
all that, and so we'll put up an email as well, like if people want to email suggestions or topics even that like maybe we don't know about, I don't know, just anything like that. We're gonna get more involved in being in touch with anyone listening, so
for sure.
Yeah, so thanks for listening, y'all.
See y'all.